Let's get started with today's story. I still remember the night that marked the beginning of the end. It was my wife Lisa's company Christmas party, held at one of those fancy rooftop venues downtown. She was thrilled about it, picking out her outfit days in advance, a sleek red dress that hugged her figure in all the right places. I wasn't particularly keen on attending, but she insisted, saying it'd be fun. "You'll love meeting my coworkers," she'd said, flashing that radiant smile of hers. When we arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and soft jazz music played in the background. Lisa introduced me to her team, including a man named Jacob. Tall, with a sharp jawline and an effortless charm, he seemed to command attention. "This is Jacob," Lisa said, her voice carrying a strange warmth. I caught the flicker of something in her eyes, a glimmer that made my stomach churn. I brushed it off as my imagination. Jacob extended a hand. "Nice to meet you, Andrew. Lisa talks about you all the time." "Likewise," I replied, though I didn't mean it. Throughout the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lisa seemed different. She laughed too hard at Jacob's jokes, her gaze lingering on him a beat too long. At one point, she excused herself to get a drink, and I noticed Jacob slipping away not long after. Instinct took over, and I followed. I found them in a secluded corner of the terrace, their faces inches apart. When they saw me, they froze, as if caught in a spotlight. Lisa stammered something about discussing work, but the crimson flush on her cheeks told a different story. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I plastered on a tight smile and walked away, hoping I was wrong. But I wasn't. Over the next few days, Lisa's behavior became increasingly suspicious. She started coming home later, claiming she was catching up on work or meeting friends. The once easy and playful conversations between us grew shorter, often feeling forced. I'd ask about her day and she'd respond with vague one-word answers or brush me off entirely, saying she was too tired to talk. It wasn't just her mood that changed, her actions spoke louder. Her phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter or nightstand, now rarely left her side. If I walked into a room, she'd angle the screen away or lock it quickly, pretending to be busy. Sometimes I'd catch her typing furiously, only to have her stop the moment she noticed me. The warmth we once shared had cooled, and my gut screamed that something wasn't right. The most telling sign, however, was her complete avoidance of intimacy. Lisa, who used to cuddle up on the couch with me or reach out for a hug after a long day, now kept her distance. Nights in bed felt colder, both literally and figuratively. If I tried to initiate something, she'd find an excuse. Headaches, stress, exhaustion. It was as if an invisible barrier had grown between us, one I couldn't seem to cross no matter how hard I tried. One evening, after yet another vague excuse about needing fresh air, I decided to follow her. She'd been leaving the house more frequently, always with some flimsy explanation, running errands, catching up with a friend, needing some alone time. I felt like a fool sneaking behind my own wife, but the growing weight of suspicion left me no choice. She drove across town to a dimly lit cafe tucked away on a quiet street. My heart sank when I saw Jacob sitting at a corner booth, already waiting for her. Lisa parked, got out, and walked in without hesitation. Through the window, I watched them greet each other. Jacob smiled broadly, his hand lingering on her shoulder just a second too long as she slid into the seat across from him. They sat close, their heads tilted toward each other, sharing quiet laughter. My chest tightened as I observed their easy camaraderie, something that had been missing between us for weeks. At one point, Jacob reached across the table, brushing his hand against hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked down at their hands, a small, almost shy smile playing on her lips. It wasn't just coffee. It wasn't just friendship. The truth stared me in the face, cold and undeniable. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos of them through the window. I needed proof, not for anyone else, but for myself. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't imagining things, that my suspicions weren't just paranoia. I stayed parked outside the cafe for another 20 minutes, watching them. They continued talking, laughing quietly and occasionally leaning in closer, but nothing else happened. No kisses, no further physical contact, at least not while they were there. Eventually, Lisa stood up, hugged Jacob briefly, and left. I followed her at a safe distance, my stomach in knots as I watched her car turn into the driveway. Not wanting to arouse suspicion by arriving right after her, I drove to a nearby store and picked up a few things I didn't really need, just an excuse for being out of the house. After about 15 minutes, I finally headed home, rehearsing how I'd act as if nothing was wrong. By the time I walked through the front door, Lisa was there, her usual composed self. She looked up from the couch, where she was casually scrolling through her phone, as if she'd spent the entire evening alone, clearing her head. "Oh, hey," she said, glancing up briefly. "I didn't hear you come in." "Yeah," I muttered, holding up the bag of random items. "Just went to the store real quick to pick up some stuff." She nodded, but I couldn't let it go. "Where did you go tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, her gaze momentarily darting to the side before she replied, "I just needed to get out for a bit, you know? Took a drive, got some air." I knew she was lying. I had followed her. I had seen everything. The photos on my phone were a stark reminder of what I had witnessed. Without another word, she stood up and stretched before heading upstairs. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing. The photos kept flashing in front of my eyes. The way Jacob touched her hand, the way they laughed together, the look in her eyes that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Her excuses felt hollow now, like a thin veil over the truth. How could she lie to me like this? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going on between them. The idea gnawed at me, turning into a suspicion I couldn't silence. The next morning, after another restless night, I decided I couldn't sit around anymore, wondering if my gut feeling was right. I made up my mind. I would hire a private investigator to follow her, find out the truth once and for all. I spent my lunch break searching for reputable investigators in the area, and finally called one who came highly recommended. After explaining my situation briefly, I set up an appointment for the next day to discuss the details. Just making the call felt like a step forward, but it didn't ease the heaviness in my chest. That afternoon, I wrapped up at the office earlier than usual, 3 hours earlier to be exact. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a car parked in front of the house that I didn't recognize. I knew Lisa had the day off from work, so it wasn't entirely strange that she might have invited someone over, maybe a friend of hers. But not recognizing the car set my mind racing, and a cold sweat started to form as unease crept over me. I walked inside as quietly as I could, trying to stay composed. As I passed through the hallway, I heard something I wasn't expecting. Moans. My breath caught in my throat as I realized what I was hearing. I stood frozen for a moment, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then, without a word, I crept toward the bedroom where the sounds were coming from. I pulled out my phone, my hand shaking as I hit the record button. My mind raced through 1,000 thoughts, but all I could focus on was the need to capture the truth, whatever it was. I slammed the door open, and there they were. Lisa and Jacob, tangled together in my bed. I couldn't breathe. My stomach turned, and anger surged through me, hot and uncontrollable. I stepped further into the room, my voice exploding with fury. "What the hell is going on here?" Lisa jumped, quickly covering herself, her face pale with shock. Jacob scrambled to grab his clothes, but I wasn't concerned with him in that moment. All I could see was my wife, the woman I thought I knew, the woman who had just lied to my face. "Andrew, I can explain," she stammered, her voice shaky, but I was beyond listening. "Explain?" I spat, the anger bubbling over. "Explain what, Lisa? That you've been lying to me? You've been sneaking around behind my back and now I catch you in my own damn bed?" Jacob, who was scrambling to get dressed, started moving toward the door. My eyes flicked to my phone, still recording in my hand. Quickly, I stopped the recording and shoved the phone into my pocket, my hands trembling with fury. I wasn't about to let him walk away so easily. Without thinking, I lunged at him, landing a solid punch across his face. He staggered back, clutching his jaw, but my rage didn't stop there. "Andrew, stop!" Lisa screamed, her voice frantic, but it only fueled my anger. I tackled Jacob to the floor, pinning him down as he tried to shield himself. My fists rained down on him, all the frustration and betrayal pouring out in a blur of movement. "Andrew, please!" Lisa yelled, pulling at my arm, but I shoved her off as I grabbed Jacob by the collar of his shirt and dragged him to his feet. "Get out of my house!" I roared, shoving him toward the door. He stumbled but didn't argue, practically sprinting out as I slammed the door behind him. Breathing hard, I turned back to Lisa, who was standing there, tears streaming down her face. "What the hell is wrong with you, Lisa?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How could you do this to me? To us?" Lisa didn't speak at first. staring at the floor as if she couldn't look me in the eye. Then her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know. I'm sorry. It just happened." "Don't give me that!" I shouted, pacing. "It didn't just happen. You planned it. You've been sneaking around and you didn't even have the decency to tell me the truth." She finally looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop. It was easier to hide than to face you." I shook my head, the weight of her words hitting me like a brick. "Easier? So what, you thought I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't notice the lies?" I stood there, my chest tightening, trying to breathe through the pain. "I trusted you, Lisa. I gave you everything I had, and this is how you repay me?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "And now all I have is this mess." Lisa opened her mouth as if to speak, but quickly closed it again. There were no excuses left, no explanations that could undo the betrayal. The silence between us was suffocating, but I knew what had to be done. "I'm filing for divorce," I said firmly, my voice void of the emotion still tearing me apart inside. Her face fell, her lips trembling. "Andrew, don't," I cut her off. "I don't want to hear it. You have 3 days to pack your things and leave the house. I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here anymore." Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't argue. She nodded slowly, the weight of her choices finally sinking in. I didn't wait for her to say another word. Grabbing an overnight bag, I threw in a few clothes and essentials, just enough to get me through the next couple of days. Without looking back, I walked out of the house that no longer felt like home and drove to a nearby hotel. Sitting alone in the sterile room that night, I stared at the ceiling, numb. The weight of what had happened crushed me, but at least I knew I was taking back control of my life. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings and cold conversations. I filed for divorce immediately, providing the evidence I'd gathered to my attorney. The photos, the recordings, the detailed account of her deceit, it all painted a clear picture of the betrayal. Lisa didn't contest it. She moved out of the house 3 days after our confrontation, leaving behind an emptiness that echoed in every corner. Friends and family reached out as the news spread, offering condolences and support. Some were shocked. Others said they'd suspected something was off. I spent countless nights replaying everything in my head, trying to pinpoint the moment things had started to unravel. When the divorce was finalized, Lisa walked away with nothing. I had everything: the house, the car, the savings. In the end, it felt like she'd lost it all, not just materially, but emotionally as well. Months later, I heard whispers about Lisa and Jacob. They'd been together for a while after everything that had happened, but it didn't last. I found out that, after a year of being together, she'd cheated on him, just as she had with me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Life certainly had a funny way of working things out. As time passed, I began to rebuild my life. I met someone new. Her name was Sarah. She was kind, funny, and patient. Though I was still cautious, I found myself looking forward to what could be. We took things slow, no pressure, no rush. I wasn't ready to dive into something serious just yet, but there was a part of me that believed in love again, even if it was just a spark. And that was enough for me. I had learned that time, no matter how hard it seemed, had a way of healing wounds. And with that, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Thank you for watching.